Wait, so this is something that actually wasn't offered before?
Welcome to ERP on Tap, your steady flow of everything you want to know about NetSuite and Acumatica, the podcast where we dive into practical tips, expert insights, and real-world examples, exploring the tools, tips, and tricks you need to make your business processes flow like never before.
Greetings, everyone. I am Jonathan McKee.
And I'm Ikra Harrison.
Hey, and this week on ERP on Tap, we are unpacking NetSuite's newest 2025.2 release and giving you an extremely helpful peek on some features that you might make use of right away.
Yeah, we have Protelo's very own CJ Lemerise, a NetSuite consultant who works with our customers managing implementations and has a deep knowledge of these biannual updates. And he's here to point out what actually matters in the newest release.
Yeah, Ikra, I'm curious. Our listeners might remember a couple episodes ago when we interviewed Tom Victor, our president, and he shared kind of an authentic behind-the-scenes peek on why, out of all the ERP systems available, Protelo chose to work with and consult on NetSuite and Acumatica specifically. And interestingly enough, both those systems do these biannual upgrades, so all their customers are current all the time. Now, in the NetSuite world, and I know you're more familiar with the Acumatica world, but in the NetSuite world, man, these new releases are always like a big deal. They have announcements and new features, and everybody shows up, for webinars and stuff to find out all about them. How would you describe that in the Acumatica world? I'm curious.
Yeah, I would actually honestly describe it very similar. They definitely do the two releases twice a year, and in between they do patches. But even for each of those releases, they do a big webinar, and it's broken down by industry or vertical, right? So they have the general business edition, construction, manufacturing, and then there you can kind of drill into each of the changes that happen and just like the new features and things like that. So it's really cool. I like that, and it's coming up actually pretty soon too.
Yeah. Now, is it? They always, when you think of sometimes those biannual, upgrades, sometimes you think, patches, fixes mostly. Do you think that it seems like most people wouldn't be excited about, cool, a fix, a patch, but it is kind of cool when something
You never know.
Yeah, maybe they're like, this has been driving me nuts. But does it seem like they usually offer some good stuff? Some like, this is new?
No, definitely. I would say from each major version release. So there's like the R1 version, which is the one that releases earlier in the year, and then the R2, which is later in the year around October. I would say there are major enhancements that they do within each version. I know the modern UI and all that stuff, all those changes are coming through. So I haven't read the release notes yet, but I am excited to find out what's new in the construction and distribution industries. I feel like that's kind of like become my new go-to area. So.
Well, we'll probably have to do an ERP on Tap episode on that as well.
Absolutely.
Today, obviously, we're focusing on NetSuite's release, and this is a big deal, and it's exciting to see. So that's a good segue. Let's dive in. Let's introduce our guest. And as we do, listeners, if you find value in what you hear today, please, help us help you. Take a second, click that like and subscribe button so you can be the first to get new content as it's released. For our seasoned ERP on Tap fans, our guest today isn't a stranger. In fact, he was a guest on our first episode 1 of this podcast, out of the gates when we tackled inventory challenges. Many of us were facing, in a world of, think of uncertainty, tariffs, all those words we don't want to think about right now. And if you didn't catch that podcast, good stuff. And you heard him there. Well, we've invited him back. He's a Protelo NetSuite solution consultant who I work with almost every day. If you attended our webinars, you know him. If you're one of our customers, you definitely know him because he's often the project manager for any of our implementations. So friends, let's bring on my friend and colleague, CJ Lemerise. CJ, so glad to have you back. Welcome back to ERP on Tap.
Nice to be here. Yeah. I think, am I the first guest that's been re-invited to the podcast?
You know what?
Special one.
Absolutely. No,
I don't
you
hold
are.
Lightly.
That means that there's something special there.
I can feel it too.
I think it's the shirt.
Yeah, probably.
It is. It really is. So for our listeners here who are fans, who have seen the podcast, you remember him from episode 1. And if not, CJ is so fun. He's a great part of our team. CJ, I got to tell you, the thing I find so fascinating is literally I don't know anybody who has as many vinyls as you do. So before we dive into the new releases, let's talk about it. What's the most recent vinyl you have bought? Come on, what album was it? What 12-inch? What single? What was it? I want to know.
Yeah, I bought a couple albums. One by a band called, they're like kind of a indie band, I guess,
Okay.
called Provoker. They're out of San Francisco. And then I bought a record by a German electronic producer called Ski Mask.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, it kind of runs the gamut. I don't know. I've got a little bit of everything in my collection. I don't have if there's a genre, I've probably got a record in it.
Can
Yeah.
can you do anything on a vinyl record?
I love that. Ikra's so
I can
dating
see the wheels
yourself there.
turning here. Yeah,
We don't want to make fun of Ikra, but you're really dating yourself. It's like I wanted to say, Ikra, a vinyl is that thing in the
I
beginning of the show
know.
Happy Days that spins around, but you wouldn't even know what the show Happy Days
That
is.
isn't that by Adam Sandler's production group? I feel like I do know. No, that's Happy Gilmore, isn't it?
Close enough. Yeah, you're like 90% of the way there.
Oh man, that's it. Oh my goodness. Yeah, no. And CJ's taste does. I mean, he's got all kind. How many can you ask? I mean, is that I know like a rancher, you don't want to ask them how many heads of cattle they have. I mean, is it bad for me to ask how many vinyls you have, CJ?
I don't know it down to the exact number, but I know it's over 1,000 for sure. I don't know the exact number though.
Yeah. There's customer calls where he will be in his office and I see in the background, I'm like, oh, do I see Led Zeppelin 4 back there?
Please
What is that?
send me a picture.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Well, I tell you
so
what,
cool.
CJ, you've been working with our customers for a long time. You're in the world of NetSuite all the time. You've seen a lot of these releases so far.
Mm-hmm.
Ikra and I were just talking about how, Acumatica and NetSuite both have these biannual releases. Sometimes it's fixes, sometimes it's cool new stuff. What do you think? Is it more just boring updates, or is there usually some cool stuff in there, honestly?
I think there's cool stuff in there. I mean, obviously cool is kind of subjective, right? If you use something every day and it's getting upgraded, then you're going to be like, yeah, this is awesome. Whereas if you you don't do manufacturing and there's a manufacturing upgrade, it's probably going to be pretty boring to you. But I think there's a lot of really great stuff that a lot of people can use. And I just recently hosted a webinar on this and went through the patch or the upgrade notes and picked out some things that I think almost anybody can get some use out of.
Well, let's dive in. 2025.2 update or release, as they call it. What's some of the good stuff that honestly that we're going to be like, oh, this is, and it's okay. Maybe a manufacturer will think this is cool, and somebody else will think something else is cool. But what are some of those ones that we'll like and we'll be able to use?
Sure. Yeah. So the first one is pretty much universal. I think everybody will see some value in this, and that is NetSuite's introducing near match duplicate detection across entities. It already exists in NetSuite as like exact duplicates. So if you were to create like a customer that had the exact same name as another customer, the system will flag it and say, hey, I think you're making a duplicate. But a lot of times, like, as we all know, there are typos. There's like the spelling or the formatting can be a little bit off. So it's like, it doesn't get picked up. So then you've got essentially the same customer, the same vendor in the system with like a period after ink, whereas the other one doesn't. And it never gets caught until at some point there's a transaction logged on the wrong customer, wrong vendor, so on and so forth.
Yeah, whoops.
So yeah, now in 2025.2, the system will allow for you to pick which entities you want to have that on. And then you can also, if you have multiple subsidiaries, you can either have it siloed by subsidiary. So it's only looking at like one of them, or it could be looking across all of them. So in case you have like a vendor in one subsidiary and somebody in another one goes to set that same vendor up, it'll say, hey, this might be a duplicate. So,
and yeah, that I could see that, and that must always be really interesting when you're dealing with your brand new customer, Mike Smith. You're like, oh, we have 4 of you. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that something that's coming native part with just like getting NetSuite, or is that something that's kind of like an add-on or an enhancement that you'd have to add, or just overall?
No, that's native. So
Oh, nice.
that'll be available to anyone
Any
that's on
customer.
NetSuite. Yeah,
Nice.
duplicate detection already exists natively on
Hmm.
NetSuite. So this is just like an enhancement to it essentially. And it's a bit more configurable in the way where, like I said, you'll be able to kind of pick and choose what entities and fields you want it to run on, which is really nice.
Just getting better. I like it. I like it.
Yeah.
Well, cool.
Does
What
it
else
work
is
on
coming out?
projects?
Oh,
Sorry.
Does
yeah.
it work on They didn't. So in the notes, they didn't provide an actual list of every single type of entity. And since I don't have access to that particular feature, that was one thing we really wanted to cover in the webinar, and we couldn't because we didn't get time to play with that. But I hope so, because yeah, I've seen that a lot with projects. I'm sure you have as well.
Yeah, well, that's where I was. That's how I use it. So I was like,
Yeah.
oh, let me just be a little selfish here.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So what else? What else you got, CJ?
Another one that I think is, and Jonathan, you'll probably be able to relate to this one, that I think is pretty universal, is the NetSuite service tier dashboard. So this is great information for customers that or users that really want to know, what am I doing on NetSuite? How much of NetSuite am I using? It comes up during sales cycles all the time, Jonathan, talking about transaction lines and monthly transaction lines. If that'll bump you into a higher service tier, we know that is something that does occur in NetSuite. I think it's 200,000 transaction lines a month
On
over
average,
an average
yeah.
gets you there. Well, in the service tier dashboard, it will actually show you that 6-month rolling average of your monthly transaction lines.
Nice.
So you don't have to do, I know that we've had calls with customers where they're like, oh, I got to do the math here and figure it out and plug it into something to get my average. And now there's no more guesswork. You can just pull up the dashboard and look and see, oh, I'm getting pretty close to that limit. Maybe I need to start thinking about what the next tier is going to look like, rather than it being a surprise to a user.
That's huge, because ICRA, you're so used to with Acumatica service tiers. It's let's just say it's a little easier, right? Because basically with the Acumatica service tier, what they do is they take, to figure out how many transactions they do it. They call it that. Calculated by commercial transaction volume, CTVs, right? And so you just take like POs or sales orders or AP bills or AR invoices, and they go, which of these do you have the most of? And that's what they count.
Yeah.
NetSuite, I'll just be honest, it's very complex. It is lines of each of those, add them all up, and so CJ, that's awesome that there's something to count. What I wish there was a way that we could, because literally when we're trying to figure out beforehand how many transactions someone has when they're coming off of, a Microsoft, or when they're coming off a Sage, or when they're coming off something else, to try to figure out what they have is so complex. But that's nice to know that once they're in there, it'll have that rolling average, so they know, hey, are we getting up too high? Because it's quite a jump financially to do that, where Acumatica is a little more incrementally. So just kind of two different ways of doing it. So I'm glad that they have that. That's a great feature.
Yeah, for sure. And there's other data in there that I think is valuable. So not only is there that 6-month rolling average, but there's also just the previous month transaction lines. And then as far as, and this information, some of this information like user licenses, how many are used, it's available in NetSuite, but the way to get at it is a little convoluted. A lot of customers don't know where to look. They don't know where that information is located. So if you want to see how many user licenses that you're currently occupying, it's there. Suite Cloud Plus licenses, it's there. If you want to know how much of the file cabinet storage you're using, it's there. So it's just a great comprehensive way of seeing how much of NetSuite you're really using and being aware of that, because so often you'll see somebody kind of getting surprised by that. That they're now going over on something, they're gonna have to pay for more. Nobody wants to be surprised with that kind of thing. And this is a great, and you see the file cabinet filling up, and you can really take a look ahead of time, get in front of that and say, do we really need to be adding these files in here, or should we start thinking about going up to the next tier? And so it gives you the ability to kind of proactively manage that rather than reactively, which I think is really valuable.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, that is really cool.
Sounds great. That sounds great. I love it. Well, keep going, man. You're on a roll.
Yeah. Okay. This one's a little more specific, and Erica mentioned projects before. So there's now a dedicated, like a specialized project manager role in NetSuite. And what this
Okay.
allows you to do is assign it to a user, and they're only going, when that user is given that role, they can only interact with the transactions and the resources and the time entries, everything that pertains to a project. They can only interact with the projects that they're assigned to and nothing else in the
Mm,
system. And I know firsthand from
that's
experience.
helpful.
Yes, I watched going through system notes, of course, but I watched as a project manager made a bunch of changes to the wrong project that he thought was his and was
Oh man.
not. And yeah, the
Oh,
audit trail
wow.
eventually painted that picture for me as we were reviewing what happened. But it happens. I mean, we're all busy, we're all in a hurry,
Sure.
Yeah.
something's
Yeah.
going on, and you're distracted. And this way, you know, you can, if you see a project and you're in that role, it's yours. There's no guesswork, and it's just a great way of kind of keeping the system keeping visibility in the system to where the user really needs to see it,
I
to their
completely
That's
agree.
cool.
For somebody who uses that, right? Being able to just see the projects that I'm assigned to instead of seeing the list, the hundreds of other customers that we have or projects that we have in there where it's like, okay, I'm assigned to these 10 or these 7 or whatever it
That's
is, and
good.
it
right.
just limits it and definitely could help reduce errors. So
Yeah.
that's really
As long
cool.
as long as your name isn't Mike Smith.
Yeah.
But
Right.
but yeah. Yeah.
So when does this release come out so that we can make sure we can start
Yeah.
doing it?
Absolutely, absolutely. No, this is good. And by the way, listeners, as you're hearing this stuff, is this something that's ever happened to you? Is this something you're going to benefit from?
Mhm.
Please jump in the comments. Help that algorithm. We want to hear from you. Yes, I've done this. Yes, my name is Mike Smith. Quit talking to me. Whatever. We want to hear from you.
Stop picking
CJ,
on me.
keep going. You're on a roll, man. I love this.
All right. So I've talked about this before in both webinars and just in general, is the Customer 360 dashboard. Anybody that really spends a lot of time in NetSuite and looking at customer records will get a ton of value out of the Customer 360 dashboard. I think it's one of the best uh, places to get a unified view of what your customer is doing in the system. And they've made a few upgrades to that. So they've added more key metrics for more KPIs for opportunities and estimates,
Oh,
for orders and
cool.
returns, and for receivables.
Mm.
So when you navigate to that, and if you haven't gone there before, you really should do yourself a favor. In any customer record, in the upper right hand corner is a link that says View Customer 360. Go take a look at that, and
Mm.
you'll really see a ton of valuable info there about like what your customer is ordering, how often they're ordering, how many open invoices they have, how many available credits they have, things like that. And what's great about it is they linked all of those KPIs to analytics workbooks now. So
Mm.
if you see something and you're like, this customer is ordering, their volume is up way over last month, you can actually click on that KPI and it's going to drill into a workbook that
Okay.
has all of the transactional data that's driving that. And a great thing about that too is you're able to, if that's something you find yourself referencing, you can make changes to that in the way that you can change like a saved search or a report. You can add columns, filter that information, and then you can save that off as a copy for yourself, someone else in your organization, whatever the case may be. They also added an activity tab, and that essentially just captures everything that's happening with a customer in the system. So if there's a phone call and it's logged, it's there. Sales order, work order,
Mm.
invoice, credit. It's all in this like one unified feed by time. So it's just, you don't have to go looking in different, like looking for system notes or
Yeah.
for in different sub lists. It's all there right in front of you.
You mean it's a 360-degree view of the customer?
You took the words
Appropriately
right out of my mouth. Well
appropriately
said.
named
Yeah.
customer 360. No,
Yeah.
that's good stuff. That is kind of cool.
Do the activities work with like any kind of integration to their emails or anything like that? Obviously, like phone call tracking or anything like. But if you did an email, could it actually connect to that and recognize that you're you've sent an email to this customer? You know what I mean? Like something that where it's not duplicate entry, where you have to do it in both. Do you think that is part of that up enhancement?
It would be as long as there was some sort of an integration that was
that
capturing that
existed.
information that was coming out of whatever email client. It's going to create that
Nice.
activity or that message in NetSuite, and that's associated with that customer. So you will see that in the activity, just like you would if you sent that message natively out of
That's
NetSuite.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
it's
think
really
it'll
cool.
reduce, not having to enter it twice. So,
Yeah.
No,
anything to be
absolutely.
more efficient.
Yeah, let's say anytime you can avoid duplicate entry,
Exactly.
that's awesome. CJ, I'm going to ask you for one more.
Mm-hmm.
And before I do, though, just want to mention, you mentioned earlier in this podcast, you did a webinar on this. This is great. What we're going to do is we're going to link in the notes below the link for that, where you're actually on the screen showing some of these things. Super helpful. Thank you for that, by the way. That's a great resource. I love us being able to just dialogue about this, but we definitely want to link that in case you, the viewers, want to see that. Please do look at the episode notes. And CJ does a lot of our webinars, super helpful stuff, and you can actually see some of these things demonstrated on the screen. But CJ, I'm sure you got something else. We would love to hear one more. We've got time for one more. So what's one other thing that you think that we as listeners, are like, man, this is something that maybe I could actually use?
Sure. Yeah. This one's a little bit more niche than some of the other ones I mentioned. But if you have multiple environments, so like a sandbox and a production environment, for instance, you may have noticed if you work between those, you may have noticed that there's a copy to account feature that exists in NetSuite. Allows you to bring things like custom forms or really just forms in general over from one environment to the other. If you've used that at all, you may have noticed it's not always so great at actually doing it. It tends to fail when it's looking for dependencies, particularly when it comes to translation strings. And I know that this sounds kind of in the weeds, but really when you're just trying to bring over like some custom fields and you can't do it, and now you've got to go from your sandbox into your production and actually recreate those because there isn't an easy way to do that. It does, that is a big quality of life hit. That's something that, you're now having to spend a bunch of time doing that you already did in your test environment. So what NetSuite did is they allow you to now move those custom objects without the dependency errors that you previously received, which as a consultant and as somebody who is always working between those two environments and transferring things, that is huge. But I've heard that even from clients in the past, is where they can't copy things over. You either have to bundle it and install it that way, or you just have to recreate it in production. And so, like something that allows you to couple clicks, bring it over, and it's there in your environment is really huge, I think.
Convenient, absolutely. Oh, this is good stuff, CJ. I love it when I mean, you hate to sound greedy, but it's honestly, I think a lot of us are like, hey, give me something I can use. So a lot of good application here, a lot of stuff that we can actually put to practice. So sounds good. Thanks for this behind the scenes peek into NetSuite's 2025.2 release. Super helpful.
Yeah, honestly, I think my favorite one, I'm being a little selfish here because I don't use NetSuite as often, but it definitely will have to be that project designation where it's only, with the project manager role, like I'm only seeing the projects that I'm assigned to. So, there's a lot more, I'm sure, that is valuable there, but that one's definitely my favorite that you shared today.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Well, listeners, what about you? Jump in the comments. If you're a NetSuite customer, which one of these do you think you'll use right away of these new 2025.2 releases? And if you're not, which of these does it sound like you might like the most or the least? Why is that helpful? Honestly, we want to hear. Be honest with us. Jump in the comments. Do that.
Yeah.
We'd love to hear from you, and so does the algorithm. So don't be shy. And if you found this helpful, feel free to take a moment and hit that like and subscribe button so we can continue to bring you a steady flow of the free content all about things NetSuite and Acumatica. I'm Jonathan McKee.
And I'm Edgar Harrison.
And this has been another episode of ERP on Tap.